guys. I'm Henry, that's Chrianto, obviously, hopefully the names come up at the bottom. I'm going to just share a screen and start a PowerPoint presentation. There we go. All good, Chrianto, you can see that?
Yeah, all good.
All right, so welcome. I just wanted from my side to welcome you guys to the Holgarten Novum virtual tasting. It's entitled #Magical Stellenbosch and featuring a magical Mulderbosch. So just from our side, a little bit of an intro, a little bit of history. In 1989, Larry Jacobs bought a piece of land, colloquially known as Veilplaatsie. That's an Afrikaans word for dirty little farm. And then he appointed Mike Dobrowitsch, Mr. Sauvignon Blanc, as head winemaker. And from then on, they just cleaned up the farm and produced amazing wines, just defying commonly held norms, and just went out looking to push boundaries and broaden horizons. About just over 20 years later, Adam Mason joined the team as head winemaker as Mike left the farm, and went from strength to strength. Adam brought clarity to some of the wines, vibrancy, and a fresh focus and length, balance, definitely for different styles. I joined about a month back, so I'm pretty new to the team, and you're thinking, well, what can I add if everything just works so perfectly already? Well, my aim is basically to just going on with this amazing trend that we are on at the moment, just a bit more focus, attention to technicalities, details that sort of set us apart, innovation that puts maybe some verve back into certain categories. Mulderbosch has been a hallmark of Stellenbosch since its inception in 1989. It's been innovative, creative, excellent ever since, and those are the hallmarks that definitely also drive me as a winemaker, and I'm definitely not going to stop. So just a bit more about our story. Currently, we're under the ownership of an American investment firm called Third Leaf Partners. And exactly how we got to that, I'm just maybe going to give over to the only working shareholder on the team and the only South African in a board of Americans, bossman Chrianto Oosthuizen.
2010, still American base equity firm called Terroir Capital acquired Mulderbosch. I joined the Terroir Capital team, and at the time we acquired Mulderbosch and a sister winery in Tulbagh called Mountain Vineyards. We then started operating, set up our own distribution network in the US, and continued with all of our partners in the rest of the world. Maybe some of you know. For you that don't know, we had a managing partner at Terroir Capital by the name of Charles Banks, and his previous career, he was employed by a company called CSI Capital, where he was also responsible for private wealth, and some of those old skeletons came out of the closet, and he was actually indicted for fraud and sentenced 4 years to jail. The equity firm then, according to their constitution, then closed down, and they decided they're going to sell all of their winery assets, since they are more predominantly exposed to the hospitality industry, i.e. restaurants, hotels, and especially holiday resorts. Myself and some of my colleagues at the time, we decided we're going to do a management buyout, and we set up a partnership between myself and my old colleagues, and we found ourselves a capital partner in New York, and we acquired the property from the fund. Took a little bit of time to put it through the ranks, but as from the 1st of January 2019, Mulderbosch is now fully owned by Third Leaf Partners, of which I'm a shareholder of. And yes, so we are looking at a very long-term strategy here. We are all very almost intense wine people. We love what we do. We love farming, and we're in for the long haul and hope to make some exciting changes as we move forward.
That's where we are at the moment. And it's a good place to be. And this is where we are right now. Our location is obviously right at the southern tip of Africa, South Africa. Over there, we've got Stellenbosch, which is a pretty big area in the Western Cape. Stellenbosch Town it's pretty small, as we'll see in a little while, compared to Cape Town, etc. Just a bit more about the winery. Now, Mulderbosch, like I said, it's always been recognized for being leaders in innovation, and we continue the tradition today with our approach to making wines. Innovation, I think it's not just a winery thing in terms of technology. As the trend is nowadays, ever more towards that minimal intervention style of making wine, you also find new innovations chemically and technologically that help you be almost more natural in your way of making wine. And I find that a little bit ironic. I was raised as a winemaker wanting to do work in the vineyard, and that's the most important work that you can do. Do that sound enough, and in the cellar, you just guide the wines through the process with minimal interference, and you make a great wine. So the innovation in today's terms for me tends to lean more to the side of going back to your roots, finding natural ways to reduce your influence as a winemaker. Create character in a wine by letting the natural processes go unhindered but controlled at the same time. It's sort of oxymoronic. If you visit the winery, the first thing basically that you'll see is a big building and a cellar that's sort of unimpressive. It's not new, it's not modern, it's not full of the newest pumps and filters and permeable material or media that can take out anything from VA to alcohol to a stray cat. It's not there. What you will see is tanks with cooling, big format neutral barrels, some new ones too. And in the recent past, we've invested in some great, beautiful 15 hectoliter foudres, big barrels, and that's it. The one thing that our winery really doesn't do really well is it doesn't dictate to you how to make wine. You know what I mean? These modern cellars with all the bells and whistles, they tend to dictate to a winemaker. That's where the grape's going. This is where it comes out, and it's modern, and it's plush, and it's ready to hit the bottle. The cellar gives you all the tools that you need to keep your mind fixated on how best to utilize these traditional tools to make the best wine possible. And after you realize that, you get to a point where you know that distinguishing between vineyard sites, that's almost the most important thing that you as a winemaker can do. That's where the most important character influencing decisions get made, is in the vineyard. More than anything else, authentic vineyard expression determines what we do in the cellar, our winemaking decisions. It's basically the cornerstone of our winemaking ethos. In addition to Mulderbosch's very own 46 hectares, like on the slide, we've got long-term standing partners with some of Stellenbosch's greatest, oldest grape growers, and that really enables us to create high quality wines at affordable prices. Mulderbosch's wines would not just be the same without the likes of the Hubert brothers, Peter Bredel, Chris Steen, Donny Carinas, just to name a few of these great growers that we've been working together with. And with them, we really partner on this long-term exercise to, in the vineyards, care for the soils just as much as we cared for our soils on Mulderbosch. We and our growers, we use the bare minimum of pesticides, fungicides, herbicides. We try and defend our vines in the most biological way possible. We use natural predators like ladybugs, wasps that feed on mealybugs and scale insects. We nourish our soils with cover crops, add that biological mass that it needs in the winter. so as just to naturally inhibit the weeds. And then we just try and cover it with more biological diversity, and that keeps soils naturally healthy. This is what you need to really get to preserve the environmental landscape, and it will definitely give you benefits, not only for yourself, future generations, future growers, your children after children. And that's what we try and do. We try and be as environmentally friendly as possible for the long haul. Some of our key selling points is that we, for more than 30 years, have got a legacy of being very innovative, producing exceptionally quality wines. We've got a very unique selling point in our branding. The strip label, like you have on the bottles at the moment, is very identifiable, and it's ours, it's trademark, it stands out from the crowd. We've got a huge amount of accolades dating back more than 30 years, and that just attests to the quality in the bottle. Wines that are really easy to understand, they are tremendously food friendly. That's an important point, because you want the wine to be able to put a smile on people's faces, that they can really enjoy it. It's great quality at great value. Mulderbosch's strength really lies in the creation of these fresh, balanced, and vibrant styles of wines, which are highly sought after in the marketplace. A few of the accolades that we've garnered over the past years, there are some of the awards. You can see they're quite international. We've got this Wine Spectator, Vineyards, Robert Parker. We've also got some of the UK's, Tim Atkins, a good friend, Decanter, Jancis Robertson, and some local ones in on Old Mutual Trophy Wine Show, the Escuras, Platters. It's definitely something that you can show clients and they can recognize as quality ratings. So these are our social media outlets. I'd like you to please, if you want to, if you can, click and like, follow, subscribe to our socials. I'm sure that everybody at the moment knows about the state of South African wine and the dismal state that the industry is in at the moment because of the COVID-19 disaster that it is, and the government ban that's been put on alcohol in the country. So WOSA from tomorrow is also starting a media campaign called #SpectacularSouthAfrica right at the top there. And it also urges people to support South Africa, #support South Africa and #drink South African. So if you can't find a Mulderbosch to drink, please buy something South African. Help us pull through the industry, because we are only allowed to export wines. There are no local sales allowed in the country, which obviously for smaller wineries as well as ourselves is quite financially and economically damaging. And we are just appealing to the worldwide South African loving wine drinking nation to help out in every which way. So if you can, please also just hashtag any one of those hashtags if you next tweet or gram or do something on Facebook, and it would be tremendously, it would be really helpful. So I would like to try something new tonight, and hopefully it works and the internet doesn't give us a lot of problems. I'm just going to stop sharing this screen now. I'm just going to go back and share another one that I've put together. This is a Google Earth project. And what I've tried to do is to show you, give you a little bit more of an interactive view of Stellenbosch, its surrounds, but obviously starting right at the top. And then for each wine, going to our specific vineyard blocks that we use. Talk a little bit about the block itself and how it combines in the different wines. So the first wine that we are going to look at is the Sauvignon Blanc, but first let's go through for a few slides, going through the landscape of Stellenbosch and of its different wards, which basically gets named after the mountain or the hilly area in the area. and then we get to the different blocks. So we start off with a map, world map, with a lot of a big Africa, and obviously South Africa right at the bottom. Zooming in, we go to the next one, which is just a high up version of Stellenbosch. Stellenbosch is right over there, and then you get the whole of the Atlantic Ocean with False Bay predominating. Now this is quite a historic little bay called False Bay, because the VOC ships would come back from India, and they would obviously go into False Bay, because it's the first little bay after the point, the Cape Point, which would be the false Cape Point, Cape Agulhas, and they'd see False Bay going there, thinking that the trading post would be close by, but it's just around the corner in Cape Town. So the name is very indicative of exactly what happened with those early sailors sailing the spice route. They would go into a False Bay. Next slide, we go through to Stellenbosch Town. There we get Stellenbosch. It's a pretty small place if you really look at it like that. Population back in 2011 with the last census was about 155,000 people. It hasn't changed dramatically. It's probably changed a little bit since then, but it's stayed pretty small. And just looking around to the north, south, or the northeast and west, it's characterized by mountains. So we'll be getting to some of these in a minute, but you've got Simmonsburg, Stellenbosch Mountain, Bottlery Hills, and to the south, you have False Bay and the mighty Atlantic Ocean. So you've got such an amazing amount of cool ocean air predominating, coming into all of these landscapes and just cooling everything down in the summer months, that it makes it an ideal place to plant a vineyard and produce really good quality wines. Zooming into Stellenbosch, the most iconic area of Stellenbosch would be the university campus, which is highlighted and with this polygon over there. The main reason for Stellenbosch was that it became such an iconic place. I think is the University of Stellenbosch, and both Chrianto and myself went to the university, and it's internationally recognized. The university's degree in enology and viticulture is an amazing degree, and it's definitely changes you in terms of how you think about make wine, the technical aspects, the chemical aspects about it. Yeah, really learned a lot. Anyway, next slide. Going to Simmonsburg Mountain. One of the big iconic mountain ranges or mountains surrounding Stellenbosch. We've got a lot of fantastic wineries that are scattered around it. This would be the Halswachter Pass over there. You've got Tokora, you've got Thelema, you've got Delair. They're really amazing sites, deep decomposed Hutton Tukulu, very mineral rich sites. We've got quite a bit of grapes coming from that area. The next site is around the Stellenbosch Mountain. Now this mountain is pretty special. It forms the southernmost border of the Onkershoek Valley, which is that valley over there. If you can get to it. Yeah, there we go. Sorry. Anyway, so it forms a big basin just surrounded by mountains, and this little microclimate or mesoclimate in here is also quite unique in terms of different sites, different wines being made from these sites, and everything just impacts the wine on a very visceral level. closer to False Bay, we move towards Halderberg, the majestic Halderberg with the dome right at the top. It's not the highest mountain, but definitely the one with the most diversity. If you look at the different slopes and the closeness to the Atlantic Ocean, you can just imagine the amazing climates and the microclimates surrounding these mountains with the different aspects. Right at the back, you've also got vineyards going down there. It's really a myriad of different growing regions in one section. And then last but not least, we've got the Bottlery Hills. Now there you can just see all the plantings surrounding it. Even though it's not as high as some of the other mountains, it's definitely got compacted and differentiated soils. South Africa is known for its differentiation of soil types, just amazing amounts of different soils in one specific block. You can have up to 4 or 5 different variations of soils. So in terms of planting, you've got to know exactly how those soils will react with your rootstock, with your scion stick. It's all a collaborative effort to produce a fantastic, good quality wine from one block. This is us. This is Mulderbosch, and you can see the proximity to Stellenbosch. We're about 6 kilometers outside of it. We do that. Stellenbosch is right over there somewhere. Anyway, getting back to that, this is Mulderbosch is about 75 hectares, where 46 hectares is grapes, and we'll get to those specific blocks that I've highlighted in a minute. Here we've got the cellar complex with the tasting destination right over there, adjacent to a wetlands area, which we're rehabilitating and making really, really nice. And that big block at the back there is the Mulderbosch cellar complex, where all the magic happens. So the first wine, and I'd like to invite you to just grab a glass, get a pitcher bottle. We are doing the Mulderbosch Sauvignon 2018, and help yourself to a sip or two. So this is comprised of quite a few blocks, and I'm just going to highlight the most important ones. The first that I want to do is our own block number 1, Sauvignon Blanc, and it's quite a big block, as you can imagine. It's on a beautiful, beautiful site. It's right on the edge of the border, and that little tree over there in the corner is actually a beautiful landmark for the whole area. It's a wild olive tree that's right on the border there, and it makes for a great picnic spot, as you can see, with surrounding views, 360 view. This block of Sauvignon Blanc it really produces beautiful fruity tropical aromas, balanced acidities, but you just got to wait for it for a little while. You just wait until it's a little bit riper. So we tend to take that off a little later in harvest. This is a producer called Blue Gum Grove, and as you can see, these vines are grown on more sandy loam, decomposed table mountain sandstone, and that reddish color sort of gives you an indication of an iron oxide, granite-y type of feel. More minerality, some flintiness, beautiful complexity out of this block over here. At the back there, you can see Table Mountain. Also on that photo, Table Mountain, I've tried to sort of superimpose the 2 photos so you can see that it's actually on the right place. A different view of it. Beautiful long rows, and most of these blocks are harvested pretty early in the morning, from 4 o'clock in the morning, and just keeping the temperatures as cool as possible as it comes into the cellar. Next one is the Nieuweland Sauvignon Blanc. again, very, very granity. Iron ferrite rich decomposed granite. It's also known as coffee clip. You have these big conglomerate stones, and there's some iron ore in it, and it's known as coffee clip in Afrikaans. In English, it's translated to coffee stone, and that really gives you those type of soils, wines with big flavor, huge intensity, and again, harvested nice and early. Last block for the Sauvignon Blanc that we're going to look at, and then we go to the tasting note itself, is on Eendrag. It's more towards Fells Bay, Somerset West area. Here it is. It's a more sandy, loamy, decomposed sandstone and shale, very herbaceous style of wine. Flinty again as well. And those blocks sort of put together is what you have in the glass at the moment. Now I'm just going to try and get you back to the PowerPoint. There we go. You can have a look at the tasting notes at the bottom, the accolades. We can run through the wine as we're tasting it. And then if you have any questions about this Sauvignon Blanc, please feel free to type them up, send them to Ben, and we can talk about it.
We've had one question come in so far, Henry. It's not specifically about the Sauvignon Blanc. It's quite an open question. What do you think is the most important influence on the final wine? Is it the vineyard or is it the winemaker?
Oh, definitely the vineyard. Unfortunately for me as a winemaker, I also understand that. But it's definitely the vineyard. The most important thing is to be able to produce really good quality grapes. The thing I think that I would be good for is to not stuff it up in the cellar. So you can start off with the best stuff, but if you do the wrong things in the cellar, it can become disastrous. But you can't make good wine from bad quality grapes. So definitely it's where the vineyard's planted, the climatic conditions, the clonal material. There's no one specific site that can really incorporate everything for all cultivars. So it's actually such a big area of research as to find the right site to be able to pinpoint one cultivar and make the best wine from that cultivar on that site. But yeah, it's a continual just challenge, isn't it, to be able to make the best wine possible from any which site. And that's the nice thing with Mulderbosch. We've got our own sites, but then we also get allowed to be able to go out and to find those specific pinpoint sites which we feel would add the best to the styles that we are looking to produce. And that's why these sites that I've showed you now, all of those were chosen with a very specific objective in mind, put together to produce a wine that at the end of the day sort of ticks the boxes in the style that we want to produce.
Perfect. We've had another question. You've mentioned decomposed granite a few times.
Yeah.
What do you think, what flavours does this bring to the wines?
The granite flavors are very different from sandstony shale type of flavors, where the shale sandstone tend to be more towards a minerally lesser tropical, almost lesser sweet type of flavor profile. Granitic soils for me tend to be a lot more tropical, sweet, your typical apricot, pear, peach, watermelon, even your precursors for gooseberries, and some of those greener flavors are more pronounced on granitic soils than on your sandy, sandstone, shale type of soils. But all of those soil types play a big role in the combination of everything to get a wine that's more diverse and more complex towards the end of the day.
Makes sense. Thank you.
And then I'd just like to add that a quality winemaker knows, understands how to harness and protect fruit from the vineyard to the bottle. That's the big challenge in winemaking, is to put your own almost ego aside and let the site express itself in the bottle.
It's more
Absolutely.
about guarding the vineyards and ensuring it reaches its potential.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Thank you.
So for me on this one at the moment, it's really portraying a lot of different flavor components. It's sort of got a beautiful little bit of a cinnamony spice, also on the nose, but opening up to amazing sweet fruit, a lot of tropical fruit still abounding on this wine, and very full. I mean, the palate weight is definitely something that's pretty. I wouldn't say it's unique to us, but the wines do get quite a fair share of neutral barrels, but all bit older and bigger format, 500 liter barrels, like mentioned in the tasting note, and that adds a lot of mouthfeel, just beautiful complexity as well, fullness, and that for us is what we would want our Sauvignon Blanc to be. It's not a wine that you just want to sniff and spit. You want to be able to drink it, and it's got to have complexity and volume and just a pleasure to drink. That's what it's all about, is enjoyment, isn't it?
Henry, I don't get the same flavors from mine.
What vintage is that? Maybe you got the wrong.
23rd of July, 10 o'clock in the morning.
We've got to talk, Chrianto. If there's no other questions, we can maybe move on to the Chenin Blanc.
Yep, sounds good.
Let's do that. I'm going to put it back onto my other presentation. And then we start moving from here to our first Chenin Blanc block, which would be on our own farm, block 12. And this runs on our border on the other side, on the Polkadroy Road, straight to Stellenbosch in the background. There it is. And it's on decomposed granite. It just concentrates a lot of those fruit flavors and brings the nice bright acidity to the fore. Quite a nice big block. It's also an older block on the farm. And then we get to one of our newest additions on the farm. It's block 14. It's a bush vine. It's quite a young bush vine. It's very low yielding at the moment, but it's got a beautiful, intensive flavor. There it is. It's planted at 1.2 by 1, so it's a quite a high density planting, and really looking forward to see how this block is going to develop, because being bush vine, there's a lot of concentration of flavors, and this is maybe something earmarked as a single vineyard site in the future for us. So really exciting times for this little block. Moving over to one of our bought-in blocks, one of our long-term growers, again to the farm Nieuweland. Definitely more sandy loam in soils, but there's still a little bit of red granite. And again, that coffee clip that was in the Sauvignon Blanc block runs over to the Chenin Blanc and makes for a Chenin with really beautiful mid palate volume as well. Second to last block is also a new block, also a new vineyard that we've planted in collaboration with our grower at Lindella, and very alluvial, so sandy type of the soil, sandstone again. And this specifically also coming from a younger vineyard gives you a lot of focus, a really good length and acidity, and that all adds really, really good components to the final blend. Going to our last block that we're going to look at is the Ristenhof Chenin Blanc Block S. I call it a maritime block because it's so close to the ocean. It's literally a stone's throw. It's less than 4 kilometers. It gets such a great Mediterranean influence from the Atlantic, and also coming from a block that's quite alluvial and sandy, it does tend to be more minerally, and that also just combines so perfectly with all those other fruit notes that you get from the granitic soils, and it just becomes such a beautiful whole. We go back to the tasting notes, and then we have a look at the Chenin Blanc. So the Chenin Blanc, Steen of Hout 2018 is a combination of all of those specific blocks. And an interesting thing to note, if you haven't thought about it before, what does Steen of Hout mean? It's Afrikaans for Chenin Blanc with wood. Now, Steen, the real origination of the word Steen isn't completely known, but as legend goes, it's a Dutch translation from listan, which is a French word that they used to identify the cultivar Palomino. Palomino and Semillon were one of the two of the first cultivars that were brought into the Cape on the boats of Jan van der Riebeeck way back when. And the word listan was translated to lasten, and then maybe to distien, and then later to Steen. So that's all theoretically how we got to the name Steen, but then it refers to Palomino. So somewhere in the middle of everything, there was a bit of a mix-up because in the 1800s, Chenin Blanc was hugely planted, and still is to this day. In South Africa, we've got more than 17,000 hectares of Chenin Blanc planted, but even more in the 1800s. And being such a predominant white grape, maybe it was attributed to the wrong name of Steen, but anyway, it stuck, and that's what we call it in South Africa colloquially, and I think it's a great story. So Steen of Hout is what we coined now Chenin Blanc with wood and Mulderbosch, and it is the first Chenin Blanc that was experimented with and commercially released with wood in South Africa. So again, our reputation as innovators definitely came to the fore big time. Also, a nice thing to note is that these vineyard blocks that we do use are quite old. They are except for some of the newer ones, they are more than 25 years old, all of them. So it's just such a great privilege to be able to use older vineyard sites and to be able to make amazing wines from old vineyards, because they just produce more concentrated and beautiful wines. Maybe I can just ask if there are any questions about this, Chenin.
Clearly, Chenin Blanc is such a flag-bearing grape for South Africa. What percentage of your output would you say is Chenin Blanc overall of the winery?
Ben, I would say that obviously, I don't know whether our customers in the UK is aware of it, but we do produce a still rosé from Cabernet Sauvignon, and that is quite a big portion of our production, specifically for the Scandi countries, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, and the US. Very, very successful SKU for us. But if we park that to the side and we focus on Chenin Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc, and the faithful Hound, they each sort of equivalent to a third of our production. So annual production volume on the Chenin and the Sauvignon is 20,000 cases each. if you talk 12 bottle, 9 liter cases.
That's quite a lot. So I have another question come in. Quite a lot of Chenin Blancs at this price point, they say are very lean and lacking fruit and texture. What is your secret to getting it like this?
Like we said, the vineyard. The sites that we work with are very, very premium sites for Chenin Blanc. You know, like Rustenhof is 41-year-old vineyards. The other vineyards are 33 to 36, and then we've got the new vineyard program coming along. The one thing that we feel strongly about is mouthfeel. We think that a lot of people in the wine industry over the years makes too much of aromatics and too little about mouthfeel. And at the end of the day, we need to experience the wine with all our senses, and texture plays a big role. And therefore, we carefully choose our picking windows for Chenin Blanc. And we've fine-tuned, you know, there was a time that we worked with 13 different Chenin Blanc sites, and we've narrowed it down to the 5 we're working now with, since we find a fantastic balance between those vineyard blocks, whereas the granite soils give us a little bit more tropical flavors. The sandier lime soils brings a lot of texture and minerality, and the balance between the two just finds a perfect equilibrium. The one thing that you can easily overdo if you use too much wood component, and more so if you use small oak and new percentage barrels, then you overpower the wine. You take all that fruit flavor and freshness away. But also with that is that all the sites produce naturally high acidic juice, and that forms the backbone of the wine, and we don't have to add any acid or anything to our wines. It's just, like we said, you know, make the wine in the vineyard and protect it to the bottle.
Definitely. And the pure expression of a vineyard.
Yeah, absolutely.
As much as possible. Also, in terms of the making of the Steen of Hout, obviously the name alludes to it. It's been on wood in different formats, in neutral 500 liter barrels, as well as some 1,500 liter foods. About 40% of the blend went into a form of oak for about 6 months, and then blended and bottled. Just adds such an amazing amount to the mouthfeel and just the general complexity.
Yeah, and it's not something we chase on, especially with the Chenin Blanc. You know, we would normally harvest towards the end of February all of our Chenin Blancs, and we would only bottle it before the next vintage. And then we allow for another 6 months of bottle maturation as well. So we really allow for the Chenin Blanc to find its feet in the bottle, settle down, and then it expresses itself super well. I think a lot of producers have a tendency to chase to bottling 2-3 months after harvest, like they would do with a new vintage Sauvignon Blanc, just to be able to say that they've just released a new vintage Chenin. But in our view, that is not what we want to do with Chenin. Chenin deserves a lot more, and we think Chenin has the potential to be the white grape for South Africa, and we put a lot of effort and investment into our Chenin Blanc.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. It needs time. It definitely needs time, especially in the bottle after the horrific bottling shock that it can go through. It needs it to be able to pull together again, because the flavors are really elegant, and there's a lot of finesse that needs to be able to just harmonize again before really being enjoyed.
It's also interesting to note, if you look at this wine and you look at the accolades, and you'll see, okay, every now and then we hit the top 10 Chenin Blanc in South Africa with this wine. And if you compare the price point of this wine against the other 9 Chenins, it's chalk and cheese. I mean, for the other producers, it's their very, very best top-notch small batch Chenins that gets the accolade. And here we come in with, for all practical purposes, a much more commercial priced Chenin Blanc, but exceptional quality and value for what you pay for it.
Yeah, that's part of what we want to do. We want to give people a really, really good wine at a very decent price. Just over-delivering on the quality in the glass.
We like to use a term internally when we discuss and plan for all of our products, and that's what we want to say is that Mulderbosch is affordable luxury, and that's how we approach it. We want to produce a luxury product for our customer base, but at an affordable price.
Yep, I think that we're definitely doing right. If there's any other questions, I think we can maybe move on to our last one for the evening.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. So just going back to our block cartology, and we start off with block 9, Cabernet Sauvignon in Mulderbosch. So this block is on a sandy loam decomposed granite soil. Again, a little bit of coffee clip interspersed. It's an older vineyard. It's a very old vineyard. I'm not sure exactly about the age. I see my question mark wanting to still figure out how old it is. But it's definitely got a lot of character. I mean, the vines themselves, you can see, are quite gnarly. They are nice and thick, and it produces the type of concentration Cabernet that you'd expect from a 30-plus-year-old vineyard, for sure.
Henry, if I've got it right, that's about a 37-year-old block 9.
Would have said it's closer to 40, yeah, for sure.
It just looks like you.
It's not as old as I am. We go to Eendracht next up, also a great partner for our growing project. And this specific block, also a very old vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon. This is also 40 plus years old, sandy loam, very mineral rich. This is a block that was originally also part of some really big rock star winemakers single vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon projects. So we're really happy to be able to get our hands on a block like this. A beautiful photo of dawn coming up just over the block, and then almost the same space, dusk the same day. So you can see I actually visit the block a lot because it's such a beautiful place to be, producing amazing cabs. And then we head over to our other bought in Cabernet, also a very special producer, right up onto the Stellenbosch Mountain range. There you can see right at the foothills, it's a stunning vista that you have of the mountain. It's a block that's about 15 years old now, but extremely rich, deep Hutton to Kulu oak leaf soil types, which is your best decomposed Hutton soil or granite soil types that you get. Big, bold, structured cabs that come out of vineyards or soils like these. And these blocks basically form the backbone of the cabs for the Faithful Hound blend. Next up, we move to, again, Mulderbosch, and we start with our Cabernet Francs. This is a reasonably younger block of Cab Franc that we've got on the farm. Cab Franc usually has more of a spicy, herbaceous type of edge flavor to it. And those elements really do produce beautiful combinations with the robust cabs, the juicy merlots, again, the spicy petit verdots, and sometimes the crazy Malbecs, but they all come together to a beautiful, juicy combination. Next is our block of Petit Verdot, also from us, facing the Simmonsburg Mountain. And again, Petit Verdot doesn't need any introduction. Tannin and color are usually something that go hand in hand with Petit Verdot. It's a cultivar that gives you sometimes dramatic exuberances of flavors, very, very different and distinct in its own spectrums, and really something that works wonders in a blend. I love working with Petit Verdot. This is our block of Merlot and sandy loam granite soils. It just is the perfect soil type for Merlot. The sand component in there, the loamy component in there makes for great color extraction, but softer tannins, and that juicy fruit that comes through is what a Merlot is all about. To use this in a blend is absolutely perfect. Our last block that we are going to move towards is the last partner of us that we get our Malbec from. It's a farm called Usana, and it's very alluvial, very sandy. It's not as rich as your granitic soil types, but it adds a lot of complexity still and elegance. And it just, because Malbec can be a bit of a wild horse sometimes, it just reins it in ever so slightly. All those complex flavors that you can use it, and it doesn't stand out too much as a sore thumb, but just adds that dimension sometimes that you're looking for in a blend of 5 cultivars. So just going back to the PowerPoint, there's the tasting note. I'm going to get myself a glass of Faithful Hound 2016. And this is a blend of those vineyards in these amounts: 33% Cabernet Sauvignon, 20% Cabernet Franc, 19 Merlot, 17 Malbec, and 11 Petit Verdot. 60 months in French oak, 30% new, and then the rest in second, third full barrels. Very, very classical wine. There's a lot to look for over here, and it's just gives you beautiful flavors of cassis and blackberry, pencil shavings. It comes from stunning locations, and it just combines to an almost seamless wine full of complexity. It's really delightful, and it's still young. 2016 is a wine that can still age. There's still a lot of tannin that can take it through a few more years, definitely, but drinking very elegantly, and it's very well poised at the moment. And that's really good. Any questions on the Faithful Hound?
Sorry, couldn't unmute myself for a second there. Does the blend change between vintages? Each vintage?
Yes, it does. It's all about maintaining a wine style, and given the different expression sites, especially more so on the Cabernet side. You know, the last 5 years, I would say, we almost had a 50-50% component on the Cabernet and the Cabernet Franc. On Mulderbosch itself, are more consistent, more prestige red sites is Cabernet Franc and Merlot. But in 16, certainly the Cabernet component formed a more major component, but 17, 18, and 19, the Cabernet Franc came back again. But for us, it's all about maintaining a style and to be able to bottle the best possible blend for every vintage.
Do you ever introduce any other grapes other than those 5?
No, we stick to those classic Bordeaux varietals for this blend, and we also don't have any interest in where we are, Stellenbosch. It's more so, if you want to put it that way, more so the Bordeaux varietals that really fare well.
How long do you think it would age for, the Faithful Hound?
Comfortably 10 to 12 years, if not more. Yeah, every now and then we do sort of a vertical tasting on all of our wines, and we've had some stunners. You know, we had over the weekend a 1988 that was just blowing us away.
Wow. 1988 Faithful Hound?
Yeah.
Do your Chenins age for a long time as well?
Yes, they do. I mean, all of our white wines comfortably between 7, 8, 9 years. Chenin definitely better. But even Sauvignon Blanc, we had a 2009 a couple of weeks ago, and was just amazed at how well it held up.
Good. That's good to hear. Slightly off the Mulderbosch wines, had a question come in. Other than the wines that you produce yourself and Stellenbosch wines, what other grape varieties, regions do you like drinking yourselves?
Obviously, our sister winery, we specialize there in Rhone varietals. So we do their Shiraz, Grenache Noir, Mourvèdre, and then on the white side, Grenache Blanc, Viognier, Semillon, Colombar, Chardonnay. So yeah, look, we sort of drink the spectrum, definitely. Always like to try something new, something different.
Absolutely, you've got to keep your horizons open, right? You've got to be able to keep on experimenting. I also love Italian varietals, Sangiovese, Nebbiolo, Vermentino, Barbera. Those are just some stunning. We've got some stunning examples in South Africa of those, but also the internationals, the Barolos and Barbarescos are stunning if you can get your hands on them. Also, just going into different areas of France, going to the Pulsars and the Bastardos or the Trousseaus, the Sauvignons. It's quite interesting to be able to taste different areas, different sites, different cultures. Wine is living like that, isn't it? It just brings you back into different eras, which is what you wanted to be able to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of young guns now also investing in small little patches of these, let's call it heritage varietals like Trousseau Gris and those varietals. And it's very, very interesting to actually, and Pinot Meunier. There's guys even making still rosé from Pinot Meunier, which is wonderful to drink.
It's fascinating. It's a huge topic. Oh, thank you very much for your time this evening, gentlemen. I particularly enjoyed those at Google Earth. Look, it felt like I was actually in the vineyard. So thank you very much. And thank you to everybody for tuning in. It's been very insightful tasting. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot.
Keep well.